This Honorable House reflect that every member is present in order to protect the reputation of those members who are absent because of the COVID-19 protocol that requires physical distancing. As many are in favor will remain seated, and those opposed will stand. The resolution is agreed. Honorable members, when this House last sat on the 6th of October 2021, I deferred naming members to the various sessional or standing committees. In keeping with good parliamentary practice, I will proceed to name them now. Sessional Committees 2021. The Committee of Privilege. Honorable Member for Engliston. Honorable Member Keith Bell. Honorable Member for Carmichael. Honorable Member for Southern Shores. Honorable Member for Central Grand Bahama. And the Honorable Member for St. Barnabas. The Library Committee. The Honorable Member for North Andros and Berry Islands. Honorable Member for Yamacraw. Honorable Member for North Abaco. Honorable Member for Central Grand Bahama. And Honorable Member for St. Barnabas. The Statutory Instruments Committee. Honorable Member for Freetown. Honorable Member for Elizabeth. Honorable Member for Mount Moriah. Honorable Member for Long Island. And the Honorable Member for St. Anne's. The Public Accounts Committee. Honorable Member for Marco City. Honorable Member for East Grand Bahama. Honorable Member for Long Island. Honorable Member for Baines and Grantstown. And the Honorable Member for South Beach. The Broadcasting Committee. Honorable Member for Golden Isles. Honorable Member for Pinewood. Honorable Member for Pine Ridge. Honorable Member for Marco City. And the Honorable Member for St. Barnabas. The House Rules and Business Committee. The Honorable Member for West Grand Bahama and Bimini. The Honorable Member for Fort Charlotte. Honorable Member for Nassau Village. Honorable Member for East Grand Bahama. Honorable Member for St. Anne's. The Public Treasury Committee. Honorable Member for Golden Gates. Honorable Member for Centerville. The Honorable Member for St. Andros. The Honorable Member for Marco City. And the Honorable Member for East Grand Bahama. We will now return to the normal order of business. Reading of roll of members, communications by the Speaker, introduction and swearing in of new members, laying of documents by ministers. The Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for West Grand Bahama and Bimini. The Chair now recognizes the Honorable Member for Cat Island, Rum Key, and San Salvador.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I beg leave to lay on the table of the House a copy of the following documents. First, the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Management and Recovery Bullocks Harbor and Great Harbor Key Lockdown Amendment Number 4, Order 2021.
Order that the document to be brought up.
Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Management and Recovery North Andros, Central Andros, and Cat Island Lockdown Amendment Number 3, Order 2021.
I do. Okay. Order that the document be brought up.
Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Management and Recovery North Andros, Central Andros, Cat Island Lockdown Amendment Number 4, Order 2021.
Order that the document to be brought up.
Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Management and Recovery North Andros, Central Andros, and Cat Island Lockdown Amendment Number 5, Order 2021.
Order that the document to be brought up.
Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Management and Recovery Amendment Order Number 3, 2021.
Order that the document be brought up.
Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Management and Recovery Amendment Number 4, Order 2021.
Order that the document to be brought up.
Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Management and Recovery Amendment Order 2021.
Order that the document to be brought up.
Emergency Powers Orders COVID-19 Pandemic Management and Recovery Order Amendment Order 2021.
Order that the document to be brought up.
Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Management and Recovery Number 2 Amendment Number 2 Order 2021.
Order that the document to be brought up.
Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Management and Recovery Number 2 Amendment Number 3 Order 2021.
Order that the document to be brought up.
Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Management and Recovery Number 2 Amendment Number 4 Order 2021.
Order that the document to be brought up.
Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Management and Recovery Number 2 Amendment Number 5 Order 2021.
Order that the document to be brought up.
Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Management and Recovery Number 2 Amendment Number 6 Order 2021.
Order that the document to be brought up.
Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Management and Recovery Number 2 Amendment Number 7 Order 2021.
Order that the document to be brought up.
Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Management and Recovery Number 2 Amendment Number 8 Order 2021.
Order that the document to be brought up.
Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Management and Recovery Number 2 Amendment Number 9 Order 2021.
Order that the document to be brought up.
Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Management and Recovery Number 2 Amendment Number 10 Order 2021.
Order that the document to be brought up.
Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Management and Recovery Number 2 Amendment Number 11 Order 2021.
Order that the document to be brought up.
Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Management and Recovery, number 2, Amendment number 12, COVID Order 2021.
Order that the document be brought up.
Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Management and Recovery, number 2, Amendment number 13, Order 2021.
Order that the document be brought up.
Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Management and Recovery, number 2, Amendment number 14, Order 2021.
Order that the document be brought up.
Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Management and Recovery, number 2, Amendment number 15, Order 2021.
Order that the document be brought up.
Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Management and Recovery, number 2, Amendment number 16, Order 2021.
Order that the document be brought up.
Emergency Powers COVID-19 Pandemic Management and Recovery, Special Provisions, Amendment Order 2021.
Order that the document to be brought up.
Disaster Reconstruction Authority, Special Economic Recovery Zone Relief, number 2, Amendment Order 2021.
Order that the document be brought up.
Disaster Reconstruction Authority Special Economic Recovery Zone Relief Amendment Order 2021.
Order that the document be brought up.
Value-added tax holiday, Hurricane Preparedness Order 2021.
Order that the document be brought up.
Family Island Development Encouragement Special Economic Program Order 2021.
Order that the document be brought up.
The Securities Industries Business Capital Rules 2021.
Order that the document be brought up.
Bahamian Dollar Digital Currency Regulations 2021.
Order that the document be brought up.
Credit Reporting Designation of Credit Information Providers Notice 2021.
Order that the document be brought up.
Financial statements of the Antiquities, Monuments and Museum Corporation, June 30th, 2017.
Order that the document be brought up.
Antiquities, Monuments and Museum Corporations, financial statements, June 30th, 2018.
Order that the document be brought up.
Securities Commission of the Bahamas, Annual Report 2020.
Order that the document be brought up.
supplementary appropriation. Yeah. What's your name of documents? Yeah. List of bills, yeah. Okay.
Order that the documents do lie on the table. Are there any further tabling of documents by ministers? The chair recognizes
Good morning,
Honourable
Madam
Member
Speaker.
for Carmichael.
Good morning, Madam Speaker. I wish to table the following. Price Control General Amendment Number 6, Regulations 2021.
Document to be brought up.
Price Control General Amendment Number 7, Regulations 2021.
Order that the document to be brought up. Order that the documents do lie on the table. Are there any furthering of further ministers, documents to be furthered by ministers?
Madam Speaker,
The chair does recognize the honourable member for West Grand Bahama and Bimini.
I beg leave to lay on the table of the House a copy of the following. The Industries Encouragement Approved Product Air 20 Manufacturing Order 2021.
Order that the document to be brought up.
Madam Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House a copy of the following. The Industries Encouragement Approved Manufacturer 20 Manufacturing Order 2021.
That the document to be brought up.
Madam Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table the Utilities Regulation and Competition Authority, IRCA, 2020 Annual Report, 2021 Annual Plan.
Order that the document be brought up.
Madam Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House a copy of the following. The 2021 Parliamentary Elections Return of Writs.
Order that the document to be brought up.
Madam Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House a copy of the following. The Electronic Communications and Transactions Ministry of Public Works Notice 2021.
Order that the document to be brought up. Order that these documents do lay on the table of this honourable House. Are there any further tabling of documents by ministers? We will now move back to the agenda. Statements and communications by ministers. Communications by... the chair recognizes the honourable member for Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Speaker, I would be calls for the first reading of bills, saying supplementary appropriation for the current accounts and capital accounts bills. I laid the basis for that in the statement that I now communicate to this Parliament. Madam Speaker, I rise before this honorable House to present the 20 supplementary budget and to table the corresponding supplementary appropriations. This supplementary budget, with an effective date of 1st of October 2021, will bring our government's budget in line with our vision for progress and will not, and I repeat, and will not increase the national debt more than was forecasted in the May 2021 presentation. As my government's blueprint for change states, we face a health crisis, an economic crisis, and we had a governance crisis. Lays out our vision, policies, and plans for a new direction or a better way forward. We have been clear that we believe the country needs big and transformative change. Our first priority is to lead the way out of crisis. A turnaround for our country's COVID response is long overdue. Policy missteps have led to tragedy and have slowed our economic recovery. We view implementing our COVID-19 action plan as an urgent priority. In addition, decisive action is required to both stabilize the nation's finances and to provide relief to those most in need. Our proposed immediate actions in these areas are the subject of this supplementary budget statement for the 2021-2022 fiscal year. The statement aligns the budget with our government's vision for change and also accounts for the critical unbudgeted commitments left behind by the previous administration. On September 16th, the Bahamian people went to the polls and voted decisively for a new day and a new direction. They voted for hope. The budget statement that we present today, building the foundation for a new direction, is designed to put our country on the path to change and progress. While we cannot immediately and completely reverse all of the damage of the past 4.5 years, this budget provides a foundation for creating a more dynamic, more inclusive, more resilient economy that delivers for the people. Madam Speaker, let me be clear. The era of mismanagement, shoddy fiscal discipline, and indecisive governance is over. We are going to share with the Bahamian people what we have learned about the choices made by the previous administration. After all, these were choices made in their name. But we will not waste valuable time or energy rehashing in great detail their sins of commission and omission. My administration is focused on overcoming the multiple crises we face and securing a better future for all Bahamians. Is a message of hope. I am confident that my government has the ingenuity the expertise, and the determination to increase revenue, stabilize our finances, strengthen the country, and usher in a new era of economic dignity for our people. Madam Speaker, before turning to the concrete measures that we propose to address the different challenges and crises that we met upon coming to office, I will briefly outline the nature and extent of some of these challenges. In the aftermath of Hurricane Irma in 2017, which did significant damage to our southern islands of Ragged Island and Acklins, very little progress has been made to rebuild these communities or the government infrastructure therein. In the aftermath of Hurricane Dorian in 2019, very little has been done to restore Grand Bahama or Abaco, or to shore up these and other islands to be more resilient to future storms. During the COVID-19 pandemic, the worst global health crisis in a century, which to date has claimed more than 640 lives in the Bahamas, very few measures were taken to expand our nation's healthcare capacity. In addition, despite the oft-repeated rhetoric promising accountability, the previous administration failed to present the state of our nation's finances to the Bahamian public in a transparent manner. One example of the many: the difficulties faced by the Fiscal Responsibility Council when they attempted to report on the fiscal strategy report and the national budgets in a timely fashion. Due to a lack of cooperation and assistance from the Ministry of Finance, they were unable to truly perform and discharge their responsibility under that act. Madam Speaker, my government has articulated plans to rebuild our islands, strengthen their infrastructure, and build more resiliently. Through our COVID-19 action plan, we will expand access to testing and to vaccines, implement new risk mitigation strategies, and improve public health capacity in clinics and hospitals. As for our approach to fiscal management, as Minister of Finance, it is my solemn duty to enact fiscally prudent policies and to report to the public how their money is being used. My government will amend the Fiscal Responsibility Act to strengthen the provisions concerning information, cooperation, and assistance to the Fiscal Responsibility Council. As the Minister of Finance, I requested, upon coming to office, a full accounting of the government's fiscal position. To this end, a renowned accounting firm has been reviewing information provided by the Ministry of Finance with respect to liabilities of the government as of the 30th of September 2021, which is approximately 1 month following the issuance of the pre-election fiscal report. I repeat, a renowned accounting firm has been reviewing the information provided by the Ministry of Finance with respect to liabilities of the government as of the 30th of September 2021. 30th of September 2021, which is approximately 1 month following the issuance of the pre-election fiscal report. Madam Speaker, the numbers provided by the Ministry of Finance for the period ending the 30th of September 2021 reveal a $1 billion difference from the numbers provided by the previous government in their pre-election report. $1 billion difference. I want to repeat that to be sure everyone hears it. There is a $1 billion difference between the numbers provided by the previous administration prior to the election and that's the truth. It is painfully clear that the pre-election report was an incomplete presentation of the government's contingent and real liabilities. For example, it excluded over $100 million of contracts executed by the Ministry of Works, for which no funding has been provided in the budget. It omits underfunding of pension and gratuity payments for public officers, which is now being addressed in the supplementary budget. The pre-election report omitted a loan assumed by the government for which the only source of payment is BPL, an entity with significant financial challenges. The report excludes amounts owing for taxes for a star witness in a criminal case of a former cabinet minister. This is a very unusual arrangement, which is supported by a promissory note signed by a senior official of the Ministry of Finance. It excludes court judgments made against the government, for which funding now has to be provided for in this supplemental budget. It makes no mention of potential liabilities emanating from contract breaches committed by the former administration. And there are many. Once I have the final report from the renowned accounting firm, it will be presented to this House. But suffice it to say, not all of these obligations that we have found can be accommodated within existing framework. The important thing, though, is that many of these entities are satisfied that our government, firstly, acknowledges that funds are owed, and secondly, is committed to resolving these matters in an amicable fashion. Madam Speaker, Fiscal Responsibility Act requires the pre-election report, which I've referred, to be signed both by the Minister of Finance and the Financial Secretary. I will leave it to the Bahamian people to judge. I leave it to the Bahamian people to judge whether a $1 billion difference between the report and the reality reflected an honest, whether the reality reflected an honest and true commitment to fiscal transparency. I leave it to the Bahamian people. Madam Speaker, Hurricane Dorian and the COVID-19 pandemic did present extraordinary challenges. We always recognize and acknowledge that. Both events have had and continue to have a significant impact on our nation's ability to collect revenue. Unfortunately, this difficulty was exacerbated during the last 4.5 years by the limited attention paid to improving revenue collection and administration. In one budget after another, the previous administration claimed that revenue administration reform and modernization were top priorities. However, the facts as we met them do not support these claims. Take, for example, the Department of Inland Revenue, which is responsible for the collection of more than 40% of the total revenue of the government. On coming to office, we found a department without a permanent head or deputy since 2017. A department with a staff complement of 215 employees, of which 114 are contractual employees. Of these contractual employees, 90 of them are working with no contracts. No Bahamian employee contracted to work at the department during our previous administration has a valid contract or has been made part of the permanent establishment. This meant that Bahamians who worked at the department for the last 4 years were being sent home jobless without any notice or recourse. That's what's been happening. So it is no surprise that the morale in the Ministry of Finance and its agencies was so low when we assumed office. Madam Speaker, the Customs Department, which is the nation's second largest revenue collecting agency, there the situation is no better. Young officers engaged by the previous PLP administration are still awaiting reclassification after 4 long years. The department operated for 4 years with an executive team of 2 individuals. Just prior to the elections, long-awaited promotions were released. But given the number of supersessions at the senior level, the morale of the department, and by extension, its efficiency as a collector of revenue, is at an all-time low. Of course, Mr. Speaker, these matters will be addressed. This brings me, Madam Speaker, to the matter of borrowing. Government must always be prudent and judicious in its borrowings and ensure Bahamian interests are protected first and foremost. I'm afraid to report that the previous administration did not take this obligation as seriously as was necessary. One only has to look at some of the recent examples of the government borrowing. First, on the matter of the IMF Rapid Financing Instrument. While the Bahamas and the Bahamian people are grateful for the support of the IMF in making financing available to us during such a difficult period, the management of this financing by the former administration was seriously deficient. Indeed, in August of this year, August 2021, the public learned from the Auditor General himself that a key condition of the IMF facility was to disclose publicly who received contracts from the borrowed funds. Yet the former administration completely ignored that requirement, and as it left office, it still failed to provide the necessary disclosure. But we'll find out. Look, I have now been advised by the officials within the Ministry of Finance that this loan was entered into without a legal opinion to confirm whether the government could comply with the terms, and there was no provision made on an ex post basis to comply with the terms of the financing. Another one, the second. The financing provided by the $100 million World Bank hospital loan to expand our hospitals in Grand Bahama and New Providence. That was poorly planned and managed by our predecessors. Poorly planned and managed by our predecessors. As a result, the interests and fees associated with this loan were placed on the backs of the Bahamian public, even though they have the money. It's in the central bank somewhere. They draw it all down, even though no architectural drawings had been completed, even though final costing had not been completed, and even though no contract had been signed. This is like borrowing for a mortgage. You're borrowing to build your house, getting all of the money from the bank, putting it under your mattress while you dream about the type of house you want to build. That's what it's all about. That's what it amounted to. If that wasn't a dismal approach to achieving an objective, let's look at something, I call it the third one now, the rate reduction bond for Bahamas Power and Light. That's totally disgraceful. Totally. This long-awaited offering promised a minimal increase in electricity costs to consumers to allow for improvements to BPL facilities, which in turn would reduce electricity rates over the longer term. That was the object, okay? I'm advised that due to, I'll be nice. I'm advised that due to the delays in the offering, issuing the bond now would increase electricity costs by as much as 20%. During a time when many Bahamians are still rebuilding their communities from Hurricane Dorian, at a time when many persons are still unemployed due to the impact of COVID-19, at a time when many Bahamians have little or no financial recourse. A 20% increase in the cost of basic necessity, such as electricity, simply cannot be justified. Now, let's add some insult to this injury. The cost to date, facing this pot of gold at the end of this proverbial rainbow, the cost associated with this floundering attempt to obtain the bond, I'm advised, is now far in excess of $20 million. Huh? I mean, I want you understand this process. Why would you pay up front for something that you're sure you can get? Usually these things are negotiated on a performance base or on a success fee. So if you get me my bond, I'll pay you your money. But you don't pay the money and then go and look for the bond. You all paid over $20 million. But we're looking into it. More than 20. And the bond is where? After 4 years, when we had left arrangements in place for the issuance of a rate reduction bond, costing far less than 20 million, right? JP Morgan. How very unfortunate for our country that the previous administration just failed to implement a financing mechanism that would have offered Bahamians real and significant reductions to our electricity costs. Now, Madam Speaker, the borrowing legacy of the former administration is further tainted still. During times of a heightened global economic uncertainty, with global interest rates changing rapidly, during times of government revenue receipts limiting our fiscal flexibility, and during a time of low tourist arrivals, the former administration also made the decision to change the structure of the Bahamas' debt profile and draw down millions of dollars in foreign currency over the past 3 years. Yet, in its August 2021 monthly Economic and Financial Developments report, the Central Bank of the Bahamas reported liquid assets in the domestic banking system of over $2.4 billion, one of the highest levels of liquidity experienced in recent times. Billions of dollars, Bahamian dollars, sitting in banks, the former administration opted to borrow approximately $2 billion, or 64% of all government borrowings, in foreign currency over the recent fiscal year. Unfortunately, visibly poor fiscal management, confidence, please remember that word, confidence in the Bahamian government weakened in international markets, and our government bonds are trading at distressed levels, 5 notches below the level indicated by our credit rating. That has resulted in an increased burden of interest payments on our debt. Madam Speaker, foreign currency borrowing at the levels experienced in the last 3 years is not sustainable. The domestic market has a much larger capacity to support government debt issuances. We need our domestic financial institutions to show faith in the economy by participating significantly in the domestic financial market. Yes. And not just to lend money to government and its entities, but to make loans to Bahamian firms to allow them to invest and to grow. Absolutely. Domestic financial institutions choosing not to participate in the domestic market are in effect betting against the success of the economy. This economy cannot expect to grow without domestic credit expansion. Yes. Madam Speaker, my government appreciates the gravity of our debt situation and is determined to restore our fiscal credibility and the confidence of international markets. Since assuming office, both the Minister of Economic Affairs and the Financial Secretary have been holding meetings with rating agencies, financial institutions, and lenders to carry the message that the risk of default is non-existent, and this administration is ready to guide the nation back to fiscal stability. As part of this effort to guide this nation back to fiscal stability, I am pleased to announce the formation of a private sector debt advisory committee to advise the Ministry of Finance on the nation's debt strategy. The committee will be chaired by Mr. James Smith, the former Minister of State for Finance. And that committee will comprise of representatives from domestic as well as international financial institutions based in the Bahamas. To assist the work of the committee, the government will engage an independent international debt advisory firm. One of the first and most urgent issues for the Debt Advisory Committee is to assist the Bahamas in tapping into greater levels of domestic and green financing. As I foreshadowed during my recent speech at the United Nations, this shift in policy will begin with the Bahamas attending the COP26 conference next week, where we will participate in discussions regarding financing opportunities for small island developing states. Countries such as ours bear almost no responsibility for climate change, but are uniquely vulnerable to its impact. Climate adaptation and mitigation finance are mechanisms for allowing countries such as ours to transition to renewable energy and to build for resilience. In addition, carbon credits have the potential to bring in very significant revenue. There are some exciting developments underway, and I look forward to reporting back to the Bahamian people after our meetings in Glasgow. Madam Speaker, in their October 2021 World Economic Outlook, the IMF indicated that the growth of all countries and the strength of their recoveries have been driven by several factors. Most importantly, the opening of borders and the uptake of vaccines by their populations. Our initial opening of borders in July of last year did not last long, with our country forced to close again quickly, as sufficient resources were not in place to stop COVID outbreaks from spreading in a deadly second wave. Once reopening on the 1st of November 2020, tourism arrival numbers have increased, particularly for the high value added air segment. Sea arrivals are likely to make a strong comeback as the cruise sector readies itself to emerge again. The Airbnb data are also demonstrating positive signs of growth across the country. Unfortunately, we have ranked near the bottom of our region in COVID vaccinations. Expanded access to vaccines is an important priority for this government. 3.8 billion vaccine doses have been administered worldwide, with the vaccines having proved remarkably safe and effective. If you are vaccinated, your risk of COVID infection is lower, and your risk of severe disease is much lower. Vaccines reduce the chance you'll spread the infection to others. And finally, getting vaccinated isn't just an investment in your personal health and in the health of those around you, but an investment in our nation's economic recovery. Vaccinations reduce outbreaks, reduce the strain on our healthcare system, and increase confidence in the safety of our country. In addition to expanding access to vaccines, we are preparing and will launch a new public education campaign so Bahamians can get answers to their important questions about the vaccines. Madam Speaker, while the outlook is certainly improving, there's still widespread suffering. Unemployment remains high. Many businesses have closed their doors. I want Bahamians to know that we understand times are very hard for many of you. We are committed to making sure that Bahamian families and businesses receive the targeted support needed to rebuild and move forward. The World Tourist Organization of the United Nations indicates that tourism-based economies should pursue 5 critical policy priorities: mitigating the socio-economic impacts of the pandemic on livelihoods, boosting competitiveness and building resilience, advancing innovation and digital transformation within the tourism sector, and finally, fostering sustainability and green growth, and capitalizing on partnerships that promote Sustainable Development Goals. I'm pleased to report that all 5 of these policy priorities are featured prominently in our blueprint for change. Madam Speaker, the Bahamian economy has emerged from a steep double-digit contraction in 2020 and is poised to achieve some gains in real growth in 2021. Both the IMF and the technical experts at the Ministry of Finance forecast a return to positive real growth of roughly 2% in 2021, increasing to 8% in 2022, with a return to trend growth of 1.5% by 2026. Now, while this forecast is in line with the one presented in the May budget, we believe it does not represent a significant enough increase in growth to sufficiently reduce unemployment, enhance living standards, and return the burden of public debt to more sustainable levels. That's our belief. Our country's public debt levels rose from roughly 61% of GDP in 2018-2019 to almost 100% of GDP by 2020. Such a level is clearly unacceptable for a country as small as ours, and our credit rating has deteriorated as a result. We have fallen to non-investment grade status, or as it is commonly known, junk status. What this means to Bahamian taxpayers is that our cost of borrowing and our interest payments are swallowing up an ever greater share of government revenues. Our plan will tackle this problem head on and reverse the damage inflicted by the previous administration. Government will implement our blueprint for change and grow the Bahamian economy at a more rapid rate than described in current growth projections. Let me tell you how. We will increase the level of public investment through a combination of direct government expenditure and public-private partnership. We will create a sovereign wealth fund to monetize the concessionary access to Crown land and seabed leases already provided to foreign investors. We will create a national wealth fund to hold the government's equity in various commercial enterprises. The book value of government's various equity investments exceeds $1 billion, but the annual return is currently less than 1%. This is clearly not acceptable. We will make the Bahamas 5G ready through the establishment of a national fiber network. Government support is necessary to achieve 5G connectivity in the medium term. Without world-class communications infrastructure, the country's growth is potentially stunted. We will retain a greater share of foreign currency earnings by increasing the amount of renewable energy produced and consumed in the Bahamas and reducing fuel imports for power generation. We will increase the proportion of government expenditure allocated to small and medium businesses by amending the Procurement Act to protect local businesses against unfair competition. We will stimulate domestic demand by providing incentives for investments by the Bahamian diaspora in the second home market in the Family Islands. These are only some of the steps we intend to take to increase growth in the medium term, recognizing revenue growth alone is insufficient to address the current debt situation. Madam Speaker, prior to the election, I promised the Bahamian people that if elected, my government would deliver a new day. Yes. One where tax relief could help families and stimulate the economy. Yes. One where direct relief is provided to families most in need of support, and one where the government is more proactive in stopping the current downward fiscal trend. So it brings me great pleasure, Madam Speaker, to state to this honorable House and to the Bahamian people that this budget statement lays the foundation for us to achieve these goals. A few short months ago, during the 2021-22 budget debate, my colleagues and I did not hesitate in pointing out our concerns with the budget. We warned then that the budget contained unnecessary election-related spending, did little to demonstrate how government would restore our fiscal health, and did little to meet the needs of the Bahamian people experiencing hardships during the current economic and social conditions. This supplementary budget statement reprioritizes unnecessary budgeted expenditures to areas where they are most needed, restores the fiscal health of the country over the medium term, and ensures that the government continues to respond to the needs of the most vulnerable in our society. While the former administration's food distribution task force and the unemployment assistance administered by the National Insurance Board were efforts in the right direction, they have simply not done enough to provide sufficient, tangible relief to suffering families. More than 17,000 Bahamians are currently receiving COVID-19 unemployment benefit assistance administered by the National Insurance Board. Many of these individuals are 1.5 years into trying to stretch $100 a week to pay their bills and feed and support their families. Last Christmas, I spent time in communities in New Providence and the Family Islands, including my own constituency of Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador. I spoke with many Bahamians who had little means to celebrate and whose suffering was evident. This Christmas will not be the same. For every person currently receiving $100 per week from the COVID Unemployment Assistance Program, we will provide to them a $500 lump sum payment this Christmas. We say to them, there's no way to alleviate entirely the suffering that they would have experienced over the past 18 months. But the hope is that this payment can mark the beginning of a new, more hopeful time for them. Madam Speaker, the government must also be considerate of another vulnerable group of persons, namely the pensioners in our society. Let me remind this honorable House that it is the public service pensioners who long kept our country running. This group includes retired teachers, nurses, doctors, police officers, corrections officers, and retired clerical and administrative staff. These pensioners receive no cost of living adjustments, and many of them have a combined income of less than $500 a month. It is therefore not surprising that these individuals have suffered greatly during the economic downturn. Let me just say, on behalf of a grateful nation, I would like to say a heartfelt thank you for your services. Our gratitude will be reflected by an increase in public service pensions. A sliding scale will be used to make sure the increase correlates with the need. I want to be clear. The intent of the public service pension increase is to support those in need. This list does not include pensions for former politicians or senators, nor does it include pensions for former judges or holders of the office of Governor General or their surviving spouse. Madam Speaker, we will increase public service pension payments effective 1st of December 2021. And it will be done as follows. It will be done as follows. There are for the 742 persons receiving less than $500 per month in monthly pension, they will receive an increase of $100. For the 2,012 persons receiving more than $500 but less than $1,000 in monthly pension, they will receive a monthly increase of $75. And for the 4,432 persons receiving a monthly pension of greater than $1,000, they will receive a monthly adjustment of $50. Madam Speaker, the annual cost of this adjustment is $6.4 million, which is less than the amount owed in business license fees by one developer in New Providence, who received the assistance of the former administration to avoid paying what was legally owed to the government. The previous government chose to help one wealthy developer. We choose instead to help thousands of Bahamians. We choose instead to help thousands of Bahamians who have served our country well. Bahamians who deserve economic dignity in their senior years. Madam Speaker, increments which are paid to rank and file public officers will also be reinstated this fiscal year. The increments, which are nominal adjustments in earnings for the majority of public officers of no more than $700 per year, were withheld by the previous government, even as lavish public contracts were awarded to family members of cabinet ministers. This inequity is now being addressed. Effective date,
Honorable members, take your seat. Take your seat. Honorable member for Central Grand Bahama.
The effective date for the increment reinstatement is July 2021. And
Honorable members, please.
this inequity is now being addressed. The effective date for the increment reinstatement is July 2021, and the payment date is January 2022. This, I don't say nothing, I can't back up. Don't come after me. This reinstatement, which will cost $8 million this year, is being funded from the increase in revenue over forecast experienced in the first quarter of this fiscal year. Arrears will be paid once additional savings have been identified. Madam Speaker, one of the most discussed and anticipated aspects of my government's economic plan is the decrease in the nominal rate of value-added tax, or VAT, from 12% to 10%. This reduction in VAT was proposed to offer modest but important relief to Bahamians. I'm very pleased to announce we are moving forward with this reduction in the VAT rate. I believe it will help Bahamians and help our economy. And the reduction is being managed in a way that is fiscally responsible. The Ministry of Finance team has worked long hours, along with some of the brightest minds at the University of the Bahamas and the Government and Public Policy Institute, as well as with international consultants, to perform extensive modeling and financial analysis to ensure that the VAT reduction does not adversely affect our fiscal position. With the reduction in VAT, we are eliminating the zero rating on the VAT on a variety of items. Price controls are in place to ensure breadbasket items will be fairly priced. The VAT exemption for electricity bills and the special economic zones are untouched. Madam Speaker, when VAT was first introduced in the Bahamas in January 2015, it was designed as a broad-based tax similar to the New Zealand model, deliberately simple in design and ease of administration with relatively few exemptions. The implementation of VAT in the Bahamas was efficient, and we were praised internationally for our very successful launch. In recent years, however, the country's tax policy has moved far away from the original plan and intent. Indeed, through the actions of the previous administration, the VAT base has been eroded by the implementation of many classes and types of items being zero-rated. These changes were considered by experts. These changes were considered by experts to be ill-advised and poorly executed, who believe zero-rating schemes are an ineffective and inefficient way to provide relief to the vulnerable in our society. That's what I'm looking out for. That's who we need to look out for. Right? Instead, there is a preference for targeted relief, such as conditional cash transfer programs. My government is committed to increasing direct cash transfers to families who need the support with the reintroduction of the RISE program. About which you will hear in more detail from the Minister of Social Services and Urban Development. Based on the modeling and analysis conducted by my team, we are confident that with the elimination of zero-rating categories and the economic uplift to consumers, government revenues are protected. The model and the analysis of the results will be published on the government's budget website. So you can see what we're doing, how we're doing it, and its impact. We ain't gonna hide nothing. Right? I requested that the modeling with respect to the 2018 increase done by previous administration, I asked them to publish that too. Put that up because it was never put up. I know conveniently, you can't find it. Conveniently, it's no longer available. I've never had it. Never did one. So, Madam Speaker, this budget statement begins to lay the foundation for a fairer and more equitable system of taxation. My government intends to be aggressive in taking advantage of the global recovery and more buoyant growth in our economy to develop an overdue full-fledged reform plan for our tax system. Government clearly must have access to adequate financial resources if it is to successfully pursue its blueprint for change, policy agenda in a fiscally responsible manner. We are announcing the objective of achieving a revenue to GDP target ratio of 25% by the end of our first term in office. At the time of the mid-year budget, we will present further details of our tax adjustment strategies, which will be implemented in upcoming fiscal cycles. However, The path to restoring our fiscal health begins today. It begins today with the reestablishment of a fully resourced revenue enhancement unit whose purpose is to increase the tax base by minimizing tax avoidance and fraud. Within 24 months, we expect that this unit will account for $200 million in additional tax. Madam Speaker, I'm a firm believer that problems are best solved when we consult and collaborate, and when we allow for the expression of diverse voices and opinions. This belief is reflected in my cabinet and in my choice of senators. And today, I am announcing that this preference for diverse voices extends to those who advise us on our revenue challenges. Madam Speaker, I would like to formally announce that the Ministry of Finance is reconstituting the government's Revenue Policy Committee. Our predecessors in office took the approach that expert advice on tax matters was not needed. So this committee ceased to function in 2017. The committee will not be constituted. The committee will not be constituted by politicians.
Honorable Member for East Grand Bahama, I'm going to have to ask you to take your seat. What is your point of order? We can't accept point of orders during the communication. No, it goes uninterrupted. And you should know the rules.
Committee.
I will advise, please don't try to take advantage of the chair.
I'm only speaking facts, man.
No, the member speaking.
I'm only speaking facts.
Go. Please. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Member.
Madam Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the government's Revenue Policy Committee not be constituted by politicians or political appointees. Instead, it will be made up of experts who understand the challenges of revenue collection and revenue policy, including the Financial Secretary, the Controller of Inland Revenue, the Controller of Customs, and representatives from other agencies. This committee will be tasked with reviewing and providing recommendations on areas of revenue leakage, adjustments, and other areas where government revenues can be improved. Madam Speaker, as additional measures to strengthen fiscal credibility and enhance accountability, integrity, I wish to foreshadow forthcoming amendments to the Public Financial Management Act, the Procurement Act, the Public Debt Management Act, along with the already mentioned amendment to the Fiscal Responsibility Act. This compendium of legislation, which was rushed through the legislative approval process without any or little debate, was also rushed through the internal approval process in the public sector. These are badly flawed pieces of legislation. There are no regulations for any of the legislation recently passed. There are no procedural manuals, and internal processes have ground to a halt, and legal opinions have to be sought constantly for what used to be ordinary, everyday transactions. I'll give you an example. If one were to interpret the Public Procurement Act literally, The Royal Bahamas Police Force, for example, could now take a minimum of 7 days to buy replacement tires for their patrol vehicles. This is what happens when fundamental legislation is rushed and put into place without due care and attention. Madam Speaker, today's budget statement sets the foundation for a new era in the country's development. All Bahamians share a strong desire to finally exit this time of crisis and begin shaping a better future. We have big dreams for our families and for our country, and we want to see our fellow citizens treated with respect. Every one of us deserves to lead a life of dignity and purpose. Our blueprint for change will put the country on a path to a more prosperous and more inclusive future. We are ready to harness new opportunities in green financing and carbon credits, ready to embrace new ideas and new technology, ready to rework our tax code to reflect our values and priorities. We are not afraid of change. Instead, we claim its promise. We were sent here to make a difference. The foundation has been set. It is a new day for all Bahamians. Forever bless the people and Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Are there any further communications by ministers? The chair recognizes the member for Exuma and Ragged Island. Forbes?
Order that the communication be brought up.
Okay, order that the communication be brought up. Order that the communication do lie on the table. Chair recognizes Honorable Member for St. Anne's.
The opposition's expectation of these communications is that they are non-contentious, and the interruptions that may have been seen or interpreted as interruptions before were to make that point on the record.
You don't remember what happened last?
We are appreciating the communications that have been presented thus far, and we ask that if our members do stand, that their microphones are on so that the public can hear. We'd very much appreciate it.
Honorable Member for St. Anne's. Honorable Member for St. Anne's, now we know that communications go uninterrupted. I cannot allow that. I cannot allow it.
I'm obliged for your listening.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you.
The chair now recognizes the Honorable Member for Exuma and Ragged Island.
Madam Speaker, I'm grateful to have been sent here for the second consecutive term by the people of Exuma and Ragged Island. Good.
All the time.
Full and just.
Amen.
God is good.
Amen. And he's just.
And he's just. Madam Speaker, the purpose of this brief communication is to clarify the policy of the government of the Bahamas as it relates to the vaccination requirement for cruise passengers arriving in the Bahamas. Over the past few months, we saw a steady return of tourists to our shores with very positive outlook for forward bookings. In fact, the World Tourism Council noted in its research that the Caribbean is recovering at a faster rate than any other region in the world. They predict very strong increases in terms of contribution to GDP, visitor spending, and overall arrivals. I am pleased to report that we are on the verge of a resurgence. And I am delighted to be able to lead this magnificent rebound. As you are aware, the current emergency orders, which expire on November 13, 2021, provides that all passengers arriving by cruise must be vaccinated. As these provisions expire shortly, there has been some anxiety in the cruise industry given their need for forward planning. Madam Speaker, as I have indicated publicly, I now formally foreshadow on the record of this Parliament that next week the Minister responsible will lay in this Parliament rules under the Health Services Act. The relevant rule will provide specifically that a person entering the Bahamas on a cruise ship must be fully vaccinated prior to embarkation and shall, whilst cruising in the Bahamas, be subject to the testing requirements mandated by the cruise line operators as approved by the Minister. In short, Madam Speaker, this is a message to the cruising community, in effect, that the status quo on this matter shall remain. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable. Order that the communication be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Are there any further communications by ministers? The chair recognizes Honourable Member for Tall Pines.
On September 16, 2021, brought a new day in for the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, where the majority of Bahamians decided that they wanted a change in leadership and they wanted a change in the direction the country was heading. They decided that they were not prepared to continue down the same path and elected our administration to lead the way with a new mandate and vision for our country. This morning, I must first give God thanks and express my gratitude to the constituency of Tall Pines who have elected me to represent them in this place. I stand humble as their duly elected representative for Tall Pines, and I commit to them and to the Bahamian people to work diligently to bring about improvements in their communities and in the area of health and wellness during my term in office. Today I am humbled but privileged to be a part of a capable team who was given a clear mandate by the Bahamian people to lead by our Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Philip Brave Davis, who is not only committed to quality national service, but determined to improve the lives of Bahamians everywhere. So as I focus my attention on the massive job that lies ahead as Minister of Health and Wellness, I do so with an unshakable faith in our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, understanding very well that all things are possible through Christ that strengthens us. Amen. Madam Speaker, the greatest challenge today facing our country and indeed the world is the COVID-19 pandemic. It has impacted every aspect of our daily lives and have caused a tremendous amount of pain and suffering in local communities, robbing us of our loved ones and persons that we hold dear to our hearts. This pandemic has disrupted economies of the world and their supply chains. It has changed the way we work, changed the way that our children learn, and it has placed tremendous pressure on the delivery of healthcare services in our country. Over the last 6 weeks, I've had an opportunity to review many important aspects of our country healthcare system and to see it for what it really is: broken, overburdened, and desperately struggling to meet the healthcare needs of our people. To put it plain and simple, our medical infrastructure is crumbling. There is a manpower shortage. Our staff is overworked, and our nurses are exiting the system as fast as we train them. I have also had the opportunity to speak with scores of healthcare professionals, patients, and Bahamians from all walks of life, and I can safely say that patients and healthcare workers alike are tired of talk. They want action. They all want to see and feel real change in our healthcare systems across the country. But in order to achieve these new objectives, all hands must be on deck, gloved with compassionate, purpose-driven leadership from the Ministry of Health and Wellness. We have not gotten to this place overnight, but it is a result of unintentional neglect, poor policy decision that transcends governments and political agendas. The truth of the matter is that the COVID-19 pandemic has highlighted the weaknesses in our healthcare delivery systems, and the old gaps that existed years ago have now become gaping holes. Over the last year, a lot of taxpayers' dollars have been thrown at the system, but the impact on our healthcare delivery remains weak. Madam President, when I came to office as Minister of Health and Wellness, I met a healthcare system in dire need of infrastructural improvements, better allocation for financial resources, improvement in health delivery services, more human resources, sound scientific evidence-based decisions, deferred care as patients cancel appointments because they feared the risk to visit our clinic and hospitals because of COVID. The truth of the matter is change is necessary at all levels if we are going to see real reform in our healthcare system. But the good news, Madam Speaker, is that other countries have been in this place for many years and were able to implement a modern healthcare system and leave a successful blueprint behind for other developing countries to follow. Though I am sad to see where we are today, I remain optimistic about the road ahead and confident that we have a political will led by our Prime Minister that we are able to implement a new day agenda of one country, one plan for health. Madam Speaker, over the next several months, public health officials will take a dual approach to healthcare reform, enhancing the COVID-19 response and strengthening healthcare system integration and care. Over the next 100 days, the Ministry of Health and Wellness will work to define the new structural adjustments needed in order to achieve the reforms necessary to maintain this dual focus. And over the next few weeks, we will unveil the new structural adjustments needed at the ministry in order to achieve the ministry's new deliverables. Madam President, Madam Speaker, still think I'm in the Senate. I see we got Mr. Kwesi Thompson there. Madam Speaker, please forgive me. My ministry has already begun strengthening public health surveillance to detect COVID-19 cases early through the use of expanded testing and expanded contact tracing activities. Early detection of COVID-19 cases not only improve clinical outcomes, but reduce community spread, which translate to reduced COVID-positive patients, fewer incidents of death and hospitalization, and make the Bahamas more attractive as a COVID-safe destination for our tourism industry. Madam Speaker, as part of our expanded testing program, my ministry will roll out free rapid antigen testing to detect early COVID cases in New Providence, Grand Bahama, and the Family Islands. Last week, a pilot program was instituted on the island of Inagua. During that exercise, we completed 183 rapid antigen tests on residents of Great Inagua. This is roughly 20% of the population of that island. Of the person tested, 3 were positive. Of the 3 that were positive, 2 were persons from the same family. All of the positive cases were asymptomatic, and they were subsequently isolated. Contact tracing is ongoing. However, based on these results, and I'm pleased to report, community spread on the island of Great Inagua was ruled out. Today, our testing team moves to North Eleuthera and will conduct free rapid testing in Harbor Island, Gregorytown, and Lower Bogue. These communities were selected due to the spike in COVID-19 cases. From North Eleuthera, our team will move to the Berry Islands, conduct a similar exercise, and the process continues. We will receive positive feedback from these exercises, and in Inagua, the residents were happy to know their COVID-19 status. Additionally, my team will identify sustainable sources of World Health Organized approved COVID-19 test kits and quality medical masks. As the testing program expands, more trained personnel will be recruited in the public system along with the private sector partners to conduct additional testing and surveillance. These individuals will receive training on how to interpret test solutions, obtain results, and record the results in our health information system so that newly designed digital platforms can monitor new cases and their medical outcomes in real time. Madam Speaker, contact tracing capability will also be enhanced. My ministry will procure the necessary computers, software to accommodate additional contact tracers. These contact tracers will receive training on how to utilize user-friendly software to transfer COVID-19 results to the contact tracing team and arm us with the information we need to immediately address COVID-19 clusters and the possibility of community spread. A monitoring and evaluation team will be established to monitor and perform quality assurance of the rapid antigen tests and to report their findings. By way of supplemental funding, my ministry will secure adequate funding for both expanded testing and contact tracing programs at all ports of entry and by extension throughout the country. Madam Speaker, we will also focus our attention on case management of patients who have been tested positive for COVID-19. These case management teams will provide hospitalized COVID-19 cases with advanced care, post-hospitalization follow-up to address long COVID, and clinical data management, which is essential in order for us to report in real time. Madam Speaker, we are aware that COVID comes in waves, and we are currently in the 3rd wave of this pandemic. I'm happy to advise that our statisticians have determined that the trend in new cases of COVID-19 per day are decreasing. Over the past 28 days, the 7-day moving average of new cases for the entire Bahamas decreased from 63 new cases down to 22 cases per day. For New Providence, the trend has moved from 51 new cases to 19 new cases per day. For the Family Islands, the 7-day moving average has declined from 9 new cases to 3 new cases per day. I am now advised that using the COVID-19 travel health notice level criteria as described by the CDC website and the new case data available at the time of this report, the Bahamas could petition for the reduction in its COVID-19 health notice from level 4 to level 3 in the upcoming weeks. While this petition is not strong today, the new case trend data suggests that the strength of this petition will increase in the coming weeks. This has important implications for our tourism industry and the further opening of our local economy. Madam Speaker, the number of deaths from COVID to date is 642, and we extend our heartfelt condolences to all the families who lost loved ones during this pandemic. I believe that there is no person in our country who have not lost someone dear to them from COVID-19. This number is high, even compared with our Caribbean neighbors, and we are fully committed of doing everything in our power to reduce the incidence of deaths from this virus. We believe that early intervention at the onset of disease, along with the procurement of new COVID medications, will result in a more favorable outcome. So we strongly encourage persons who experience medical symptoms associated with COVID-19 to seek medical help as soon as they experience discomfort, particularly with breathing. Madam President, we see encouraging signs also in the reduction in the number of persons in hospital. At the end of last week, there were 92 persons in hospital with 12 in the intensive care. These numbers have reduced sharply from a high of 195 hospitalizations on September the 8th and 24 persons in ICU on September the 11th and the 21st. Madam Speaker, a part of enhancing the COVID response, my ministry will aggressively promote vaccination of eligible citizens and residents, as we firmly view that vaccination reduces the incidence of severe illness, hospitalization, and death from COVID-19. The most recent report on our vaccination program revealed that at the close of the business hour on October the 23rd, 2021, there were 127,565 Bahamians and residents fully vaccinated, which accounts for some 39% of our population. While we are encouraged by these numbers, we must be well-minded that other Caribbean neighbors are ahead of us. Over 10,000 appointment slots are available this week in New Providence alone. These slots are being booked at various different centers, and we strongly advise Bahamians everywhere and residents who have not been vaccinated to take advantage of these appointments. While the trend in new cases is down, there are expectations of new potential waves of infections that can possibly reach our way this winter. So I encourage Bahamians everywhere at the sound of my voice to move and get vaccinated as soon as possible. We are also moving to make vaccination more accessible to the wider public by setting up pop-up centers at the Bahamas Correctional Institute and the University of the Bahamas. Pop-up centers located at the mall will take place this Thursday. We also have a mobile unit to support members of the community who are physically unable to visit a vaccination center. In the Family Islands, our vaccination campaign are being run by our Family Island clinics and supported by the Vaccination Committee here in New Providence. Madam Speaker, a part of enhancing COVID-19 response also demands that we effectively communicate with the general public. Since we will have to live with this disease in many years to come, it is important that the ministry effectively and efficiently convey to the public the best way to protect themselves and to become vaccinated. To this end, my ministry has already established a communication task force whose role will be to disseminate information through various media platforms regarding health protocols, vaccinations, testing, and the delivery of healthcare services throughout our archipelago. Madam Speaker, Over the next 100 days, my ministry will also focus on creating structural health system integration. This will be to finalize and improve the organizational structure for the Ministry of Health and Wellness. This structure would include the following entities: the Bahamas Public Health Institute, Public Health Act, the Bahamas Health Services Authority, and the National Health Insurance Authority. Madam Speaker, additionally, we plan to strengthen our health system integration by establishing a project management and coordination committee. This committee will focus on establishing project management and coordination framework to see ongoing programs come to fruition. Madam Speaker, today I give notice that I intend to lay regulations by way of the existing Health Services Act to govern the management of COVID-19 pandemic, and hereby notify this honorable House that our administration will not renew the emergency orders once they expire on November the 13th, 2000. Already, talks are on the way with the Office of the Attorney General to devise fresh new legislation to address the management and major health risks that can affect the Bahamas. As part of this legislation, we will remove and redefine the role and duty of the once competent authority. Madam Speaker, I wish to take this opportunity to speak briefly to a recent event regarding the Princess Margaret Hospital maternity ward. On Saturday of last week, I learned of a peaceful demonstration in Rawson Square by concerned citizens, mothers, families, protesting the poor conditions at the Princess Margaret maternity ward. These appear to be serious allegations, and I, as minister, assure the mothers, families, and general public that a full investigation will take place into these matters, and the findings will be made public, and all the necessary steps will follow. I have been appraised of the shortfalls in terms of resources at the hospital and intend to do my best to meet these challenges, but will not condone neglect of those persons entrusted in our care. But I must say for the record that the former Progressive Liberal Party administration saw the critical need, and in 2016, the Public Hospital Authority signed a $15 million contract with Guaranteed Construction Limited for work to be carried out at our maternity ward, our male surgical ward, our legacy entrance at the Princess Margaret Hospital. With the last PLP administration departure from office, these contracts were never executed. Madam President, finally, before I take my seat, I would like to thank the Pan American Health Organization and the entire medical team at the Princess Margaret Hospital, the Sandilands Rehabilitation Center, the Rand Memorial Hospital, and all the clinics scattered throughout our archipelago. I must say, you have been kind, you have been respectful, and you have been informative. And I say, we have a lot of work to do, but with God on our side, we can laugh at the storm. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Are there any further communication by ministers? The chair recognizes Honourable Member for Engliston.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, I rise today as my first order of duty to the nation as the newly appointed Minister of Education and Technical and Vocational Training to report to this Honorable House on the status of our national education system and specifically as to the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the delivery of public education in our country. I am humbled to do so beyond measure, to contemplate that I assumed the helm of education in this country more than 50 years since my late father, A.D. Hanna, became the first Minister of Education in a post-majority rule Bahamas. It was by any objective measure an impressive tenure, where unprecedented progress and advancement was made in the life of our people. And I am humbled to follow in his shadow, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the process of education not only seeks to develop the human potential of each individual child, but it is key to the collective future of any people. The qualitative state of our educational system will therefore dictate the state of peace, prosperity, and progress of our nation. We have always told ourselves, and we do believe, that education is the key to our national development. And so in this nation, we moved ourselves from one public high school in this country pre-1967 to where we are today as a result of significant investment and a national commitment to education. Having in the region of 150 public schools, some 3,200 teachers, and approximately today 42,000 students, which altogether comprise the current public education arsenal of our island state. The journey of seeking to refine our educational system has not been without challenges, but it was never short on effort, dogged determination, and tremendous commitment of the many stakeholders. However, the COVID-19 pandemic and its impact on the education of our children has presented an unprecedented challenge. Indeed, what could be called a state of emergency. From the evidence emerging, the interruption of education in our public schools has been cataclysmic, or can be deemed, in the words of UNESCO, a catastrophe. Madam Speaker, on March 16, 2020, all schools throughout the Bahamas were closed in the early aftermath of the first cases of COVID-19 infection in the Bahamas. Thereafter, our schools were subject to a roller coaster response to COVID-19, varying between complete shutdown, full virtual, hybrid virtual and face-to-face, and in some islands, full face-to-face. On August 30th, 2021, following discussions with the Ministry of Health, the then Ministry of Health, the decision was made by the Ministry of Education to suspend all face-to-face instruction and to go fully virtual. This was due to the rapid increase in COVID-19 cases on many islands and the fact that the public health system was near collapse due to the strain caused by persons being admitted with apparent Delta variant of the virus. These stops and starts and ups and downs in the school system were completely resultant to the erratic nature of the pandemic outbreak and the severity of cases which manifested throughout the archipelago. The Ministry of Education and the teachers and administrations of this nation responded quickly, ultimately initiating and developing its own learning management system for children nationwide to access educational instruction virtually. However, despite the best efforts of all involved, this pandemic has necessitated a change in the delivery of education, a widening in the learning divide, which is believed to have had enormous adverse effects on our students. This is a critical issue requiring our immediate and full attention. The United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, has stated that, and I quote, "School closures carry high social and economic costs for people across communities. Their impact, however, is particularly severe for the most vulnerable and marginalized boys and girls and their families. The resulting disruptions exacerbate already existing disparities within the education system, but also in other aspects of their lives. These include interrupted learning, poor nutrition, confusion and stress for teachers, parents unprepared for distance and homeschooling, challenges creating, maintaining, and improving distance learning, gaps in childcare, high economic costs, unintended strain on healthcare systems, increased pressure on schools and school systems that remain open, a rise in dropout rates, increased exposure to violence and exploitation, social isolation, and challenges measuring and validating learning. The data obtained from UNESCO has shown that the effects of interrupted learning may be long-lasting, limiting cognitive development, and severely impacting our students with special needs, resulting in higher unemployment and lower wages. The evidence compiled by UNESCO also suggests that the impact may be generational. Even before the pandemic, there was a well-established body of research that suggests a high correlation between each year of school a child completes and their ultimate lifetime earning capacity, which means each year of school a child does or does not complete has a huge impact on their income levels and ultimately their lives. Here in the Bahamas, we have yet to know for certain the full extent of the fallout from this extended and extensive disruption. The ministry must procure, and we will mandate, the collation of as much data as is practically possible to garner a proper and full evidence-based understanding and analysis of the effects of these events and the implications for our future. This is critical so that we may swiftly implement strategically targeted remedial interventions to reverse or minimize the damage caused by the disruption in education in the Bahamas. We have already begun this process by enlisting the expertise of the Department of Statistics to assist the ministry in more clearly understanding the reasons for or the barriers to our children accessing virtual learning. We do know, if only somewhat anecdotally, that among those barriers are challenges with internet access and the provision of student supervision, particularly for working parents. In some of our islands, the unreliability of the electrical supply or internet service appears to have been a significant issue from time to time. Once we have the results of these surveys, so that we can respond more effectively and thereby minimize gaps in the delivery of education to our nation's children in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. What we do know so far, however, is a matter of grave concern, as it seems clear that thousands of children at varying levels of the educational spectrum have either been completely absent for the entirety of this crisis or have been worryingly inconsistent in attendance via virtual classes. Some children would very likely have been more greatly affected than others, and there are enhanced concerns for children with special needs who would have faced unique barriers in a virtual learning environment. Some schools have been more greatly affected than others. UNESCO's analysis indicates that it could, and I quote, take a decade to return to the situation before the pandemic, but that a recovery could be achieved by 2024, 3 years from now, if exceptional efforts are made to provide the remedial class and catch-up strategies necessary. This requires an adequate financial, policy, and programming response with a particular emphasis on marginalized children, end quote. I wish the Bahamian people to know that the Ministry of Education is in a heightened state of activation to seek to minimize the harm caused by these circumstances, to ameliorate the negative impacts, and pursue a course of action to recover the healthy prospect of our nation's children, and to support our teachers, many of whom themselves have been negatively impacted in this pandemic-driven education environment. I pledge that we will do everything within our power to ensure that we do not produce a lost generation of Bahamian youth. The task is huge. The Department of Education has developed a national strategy to assist in the recovery, remediation, and acceleration of student learning and performance. The Curriculum Division has developed guidelines and recommendations for implementations of recovery and acceleration plans. Relying upon empirical data, the Department of Education will now enlist the assistance of educators, guidance counselors, school attendance officers, and others to reach out to the parents and guardians of our children who have not been consistent in their school attendance to offer support. Additionally, technical officers have participated in the region's development of the CDB CARICOM OECS Model Learning Recovery and Enhancement Program for Caribbean schools, otherwise known as Let's Reap. This learning recovery model has been widely accepted, and we will seek to implement where relevant. These measures will help to halt the ongoing damage being done, to address the negative impacts that have already occurred. We will implement remediation programs at varying levels to ensure that no child is left behind. And I'm going to repeat that. Measures that we will undertake will help to halt the ongoing damage being done and to address the negative impacts that have already occurred. We will implement remediation programs at varying levels to ensure that no child is left behind. Madam Speaker, it is critical for us not only to fix the areas of the system that our data is telling us is creating an educational divide. We must also attempt to reverse the effects that situation has already had on learning outcomes. In our recovery and remediation efforts, we will need to join hands with the National Training Agency and the Bahamas Technical and Vocational Institute to assist in filling gaps where appropriate. And this might expand based on how we are able to accelerate our remediation program. I ask all parents who know that they are having issues with access to education to reach out to us and let us know what is going on. I know it is difficult and can sometimes feel impossible, but we are all facing this national crisis together. We must do all that we can to ensure that our students, our children, our future are making the most of opportunities being provided. We need your support and collaboration for this to work. At times, sacrifices may be necessary and compromises will be made as we navigate this challenging time. If we want to achieve any measure of success, it can only be done through unity of purpose and parents, teachers, students, and administrators working together to make it happen. The Ministry of Education and Technical and Vocational Training is fully committed to restoring face-to-face learning in our public schools. And I want to repeat that. The Ministry of Education and Technical and Vocational Training is fully committed to restoring face-to-face learning in our public schools, but can only do so without compromise to public health, and only in collaboration with all of its stakeholders and in consultation with the Ministry of Health and Wellness, utilizing both our traditional and our hybrid models of instruction. Pursuant to this commitment, the Minister of Health and the Minister of State, the member for Yamacraw, have over the last several weeks traveled to several islands, inspecting all of the schools. They're almost finished. They have a couple more islands to go to, and health facilities to make a determination as to which schools can reopen for face-to-face learning in accordance with the mandated safety protocols. We are completely guided by the Ministry of Health and Wellness on the question of safely reopening the schools. In this regard, however, we do face a second challenge, and it relates to the state of repair of several of our schools, both here in New Providence and throughout the country. It seems that the annual summer school repair effort has lagged, and it is now incumbent upon us in this new administration to accelerate those works so that when in-person classes are recommenced, as per the advice of the Minister of Health and Wellness, the physical plant of our schools will be in acceptable condition to welcome our children back. Madam Speaker, unfortunately, this reality will, in and of itself, hinder in-person classes in some of our schools, despite our best efforts. We are mobilizing all the resources necessary to address this situation as quickly as we can, and I want to thank the Minister of Works for his collaboration with us on this issue. A third challenge is a critical shortage of teachers, a phenomenon we are now focusing on to determine how best we can replenish our teacher complement through the use of the virtual school, as well as the strategic recruitment of specialized teachers and the revitalization of the Teachers Cadet Program. We will do all that is possible to ensure the education of our children will not suffer because of this. The plan for continuation of learning calls for a multifaceted approach that involves careful planning at all levels as we account for every eventuality, including a hybrid model of virtual and face-to-face instruction. These facets include, but are not limited to, ICT infrastructure upgrades to allow for the hosting of virtual learning activities, building capacity of teachers to enable them to adequately deliver lessons in a virtual learning environment, development of multimedia instructional content led by curriculum officers and scores of teachers that could be delivered via radio, television, the learning management system, and in hard copy learning packages that could be worked on remotely. And the production and broadcast of public service announcements created by the communications section to inform the general public, parents and students of the opportunities being made available to them. We must exhaust all measures to get our children back to in-person learning as safely and as quickly as possible, to close all learning gaps, and to allow our children who are facing challenges to catch up, including those who may now be considered dropouts. On a parallel basis, with this aggressive corrective action, we must fully engage in the futuristic transformation of our educational system through the review of the curriculum, through investment in material resources, and the development of out-of-the-box innovations to create a paradigm shift in the performance of our children and in the quality of education in the Bahamas. I wish to thank all stakeholders, especially our teachers, our school administrators, the support staff, our guidance counselors, the senior officers, the permanent secretary, the director of education, and the entire team at the Ministry of Education and Technical and Vocational Instruction. This extends also to our external stakeholders as well, the Bahamas Union of Teachers, Bahamas, the BEMU, BPSU, and of course all the parents and members of the community who have assisted in these efforts. Madam Speaker, the task ahead is monumental. We are living in the midst of the largest health and economic crises in recent memory, coupled with the largest transformations in educational systems and the delivery of education in human history. All of this has happened in a year and a half. Educational officials have been responding in real time to a constantly changing situation. It is a very challenging situation. But, Madam Speaker, failure is not an option. For the sake of our children, we have no choice but to get this right. But to succeed, Madam Speaker, we will need all hands on deck. This really is about our future. Let us make it happen. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Order that the communication be brought up.
You have to put it in order. Okay. Thank you. Thanks very much.
Order that the document do lie on the table. Are there any further communications by ministers? No further.